Welcome, everyone. I'm Jonathan Kirshner, and this is a podcast about leadership. Today is a very special day. First of all, I am wearing my All-Star jersey from 25 years ago. It was one of my moments of glory. It was an hour and say 20 minutes of glory, even though I got open ice hit. And was probably the worst on the team. I made the All-Star team, and to this day, many of you know I am absolutely in love with hockey. And I'm in love with hockey because I grew up playing the sport, and I think it's the best game. Okay, we could debate this, but I'm also fascinated with performance, teaming, and how leadership plays a role in hockey. And right now I'm actually captain of my team, the Philly John, which is our cancer hockey team that it plays for a really wonderful cancer charity called the RCCS tournament. And I'm joined here today with two incredible experts in the field of psychology, performance, and sport. So we've got Simon Rice, who's the VP of Athletic Care for the 76ers, and I can't wait to hear about what's going on with the 76ers. There's a really good thing going on right now. We're 7-4, Simon?
That's right, 7-4.
7-4 right now. Early in the season, but 7-4 and looking really, really nice in general, and especially, compared to last year. And we have Holly Benner, who is the Associate Director of Global Talent Management for Merck. And if you thought that would be like enough to just have a day job working at one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, helping empower and inspire and enable leadership effectiveness, she's also an ultramarathon runner and a coach for both business and sport professionals. And so we're going to really immerse ourselves in leadership, of course, but through the lens of sports psychology, performance, and what it takes to be excellent in that domain. And that will be fascinating. If we could generalize that into the domain of organizational effectiveness, that would be delightful. So with that said, welcome. And maybe we could just kick ourselves off. How did you guys get interested in this? Maybe Holly, we could start with you. How did you get interested in sport performance?
Sure.
Give me the journey.
Yeah, and it has been a journey, but at the same time, it's always been a part of who I am and how I live my life. So, going way back, got into graduate school at Clemson, South Carolina. I was really interested in why and how people show up at this thing called work. And the concept of retirement actually was very fascinating to me. I studied retirement in graduate school because it was such an interesting way to have an identity as an employee. So I was really fascinated by this concept, and I studied a lot of demographic differences when it comes to retirement. But along my graduate school, I was always an athlete, a student athlete. Ever since I was in elementary school, I was a competitive swimmer in the 6th grade. I was doing doubles in middle school. So I was swimming before school, after school. So this is a long-standing habit that I've had when I've, been balancing getting the most out of myself athletically and academically. And as I started my career after Clemson, I really got focused in how people perform at work. And I was really interested in the training and the environment and what sets people up for success in whatever kind of domain they are practicing. And I had the privilege of working with a variety of industries. And the good news is that people are everywhere. And some people are cut a little different. And I like to call those people type A+. So along my career development, I was also a competitive athlete. I mentioned before swimming,
Mhm.
swimming turned into rowing at a very high level, trying to make the 2012 team, which actually brought me from Clemson, South Carolina to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That transitioned into triathlon, which I competed at an elite level as a professional triathlete. And now I'm an elite marathoner and ultramarathoner. Even though I keep getting older, I keep getting faster. Didn't expect that to happen. But along these two trajectories, my career and my passion, I've noticed again these type A plus people that like to live a big life. And for many, many years, I kept them very separate. I was very worried that my identity as an athlete would conflict with my identity as a career high performer. I didn't want to be seen like I was splitting my time and attention in two different domains, because how could I possibly be high performing in two things? And over time, I got more comfortable with merging these identities together, because truly it was me and I was doing both at a high level. And I had been years ago, I developed, a coaching business. People were coming to me. It was really organic. People were like, hey, you do that thing I want to do. Help me do that thing you do. And so over the years, I had gotten what I call sets and reps, more practice and experience as a coach. And I recognized after 15 years of coaching high performing athletes, multi-sport athletes, endurance athletes across the country, amateurs to professionals, that they had something in common. A lot of my clients were business owners, entrepreneurs, executives, again, type A plus.
Mhm.
They want to get after it in all walks of life. So I decided to go to Brown University and get my ICF credentialing in leadership and performance coaching. And now I've been really creating a space to bring these two worlds together, where I can help people uncover their best self in work, sport, and life. And I love it.
Amazing. I absolutely love that. And I love that your career started. I love that the beginning of this journey, it started in studying retirement. And sometimes, sometimes a coach will say, all right, let's start with what the end point you're trying to reach is. Like, what does success look like 1 year from now, and then work backwards. And it's just interesting to me that you chose to start, this journey studying retirement, which is fascinating. I love the integration. Thank you, Holly. Folks, we have a bonus today. We have Lindsay joining us with sports performance professionals. Like they come in and out. Like things are dynamic, right? Team needs you, player needs you.
Yeah,
So I'm really, I mean, maybe you could, speak to that, Lindsay. We're just doing some introductions. With Lindsay Shaw, Director of Sports Psychology for the Cleveland Guardians, and it's a pleasure to have you on this call, on this podcast today.
Thank you for having me. Great to see you all. I would have worn my team gear had I known.
It's not too late.
It was like a jersey optional. Yeah, but that is how it happens sometimes. And just like in the world of business, sometimes there's a fire drill and sometimes there's a fire, and things happen, and here we are.
Well, here we are. It's awesome to have you. Maybe, just briefly, like, how did you get into this field, into the role? Give us a sense of the journey, and then Simon, we'll hear from you. Well, then we're going to dig into our topic of leadership and sport performance.
Super. Simon, are you going?
Sure, I can go. Sure. So, probably similar to a lot of people. As a child, I was just active and interested in sport. I tried to play as many as I could, and that involved. I grew up in Australia. That was swimming, that was basketball, that was cricket, that was soccer, whatever that was. I really enjoyed that. Played all the way through adolescence as well. And then the same as everybody, there is a period that you have to make some decisions about what you want to do with the rest of your life. And for me, it was probably more of a process of things I wasn't interested in doing more so than what I was interested in doing. I knew that I was not at that time interested in doing something that involved sitting down inside behind a computer. I didn't really know what I wanted, but I had a pretty strong sense that it wasn't something like that, certainly at that period. I did a fairly general sports science degree. Started off working in the performance space across a lot of different sports. That was in strength and conditioning and performance at an elite and professional sports level. From there, that developed my interest in injury rehabilitation. I went back and studied physical therapy, and then subsequent masters in physical therapy, very focused on sport and exercise. Again, spent some time working in a lot of different team, individual, Olympic, Paralympic sports, so quite a large variety. A little sabbatical there where I actually was in London, worked on some West End shows and ballet, so performance at a very high level in a different space. And then now this is my 6th season in my role with the 76ers, and that's a different role again. In this one, I sit across a team of clinicians, which is physical therapists, massage therapists, sports science, nutrition, psychology, strength and conditioning, and trying to look at the whole athlete and human being, and then how do we reduce illness and injury and maximize performance, which is really, really interesting to me. And what I would say, and I think this leads into some of the things we're going to discuss, having had the privilege, I suppose, of working in different countries and so many different areas, and more recently being exposed to the business side through your podcast, through some of the stuff that you do, Jonathan. What I've learned and I'm continuing to learn is there's so many more similarities than there are differences, and that there's so many more common themes across sports, across business, across different facets of performance than there are differences, and that's something that I'm really interested in.
Nice. Yeah, there's that common denominator of people.
I think
Damn
that's
people.
I think everything involves human beings, and
that's right.
It's funny, it's funny how that changes everything.
Yeah, no, it's that's amazing. I love it, Simon. Fascinated about how you keep, it seems almost probably like a balancing act between all those different facets. I mean, there must have been like 6 to 8 different facets of performance and sort of injury prevention that you oversee. And I'll be curious to know, like, how do you sort of keep that in harmony? And what do you do when it gets out of harmony? So that would be something maybe we come back to. Lindsay, how about you? How did you, how did you get to where you are right now?
Yeah. I'm happy to share. I guess it's just lingering in my mind where Simon kind of left it. I think the interesting thing about coming from the world of sport is that it's so obvious, right? The performance is pretty obvious. Like, you're running faster or you're not, you're pitching with precision or you're not, you're injured, you're not. So in the business world, there's maybe these subtleties, but like in my position, my background as a sports psychologist, there's a, what looks like maybe simple, run faster, jump higher, do this. There's a lot of like these internal dynamics that play into that. It's not always, I'm sure it's similar in basketball or maybe in running, Holly, or in hockey for you, Jonathan. It's so tempting to say like, oh, we just got to fix the guy's technique and then everything's going to get better. And if it was just that simple, teams would only have technical coaches. They wouldn't have all of these other specialists. So to my background, I was pretty interested in lots of different sports, did gymnastics at a fairly high level, competed in college. I was always fascinated as a gymnast, like why could I do this skill 5 seconds ago? I did it, no problem. I felt, it wasn't that scary. And now all of a sudden I'm like the balance beam, right? You're supposed to go like flip, 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 flip in a row. And then I'm ready to start. All of a sudden, I'm like, whoa, now, like, what's going on? I always found that really interesting. I I had the privilege of meeting the sports psychologist who trained me in graduate school when I was a teenager. And I was like, I'm going to be just like you, buddy, when I grow up.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and then, I competed sports in college, and then was still kind of not exactly sure what I wanted to do. I went to the University of Pennsylvania. I was really influenced by Martin Seligman's work there in positive psychology. And I think it had kind of mapped onto sports psychology for me. I studied sports psychology a little bit in high school. I went to a boarding school. They let you do independent studies. So I did some of that. Yeah. And I just went to graduate school. I did my dissertation research in psychophysiology. So sort of measuring and training the mind-body connection. So like brain waves, heart rate rhythms. And I was lucky that the US Olympic Committee was looking to start a laboratory right when I finished grad school. I had designed a laboratory for a sports school in Doha, Qatar, and they wanted me to design and, train staff, provide training to athletes. So I got a job at the Olympic Committee, and after about a decade there, I made the jump to Major League Baseball. That's been about 5 years. And it's kind of similar to what you raised, Simon, and similar to the topic of, our panel and this podcast. There's a lot that goes into performance, right? Now, whether it's that, it's like business planning, conceptualizing deals, giving presentations. We just do it in a different domain. But yeah, there's a way you can measure, assess, plan, work with the internal dynamics, and prepare someone to perform. That's really similar across domains.
Wow. Well, I do, there's a common denominator as well between you, Lindsay, and Simon. Both of your respective teams, have most recently or currently going through what could arguably be called a turnaround, right? And so I'm just really interested in this phenomena. Like, imagine I'm an alien that just came down, from space, and I'm at a game and I see a team that was stuck or stagnating or losing, and all of a sudden now it's like there's this positive momentum. So very curious about that phenomenon. So when I put it in the parking lot for a sec, I want to just dive into the big broad question of like individual performance. So Holly, like you talked about, like something we all share as athletes is this sort of A+ mindset. It's like, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it. Like, we're going to go sort of all out. But then, you have all these athletes that are going all out, and only a few, a very select few make it to the elite level or the Major League Baseball, or the NBA, or the NHL, or the NFL, right? So, I'm curious, like you mentioned sets and reps and technique, but that only gets you so far, right? And that's where, there's a point of divergence where excellent, where good goes to excellent, and excellent then gets separated from elite. I'm curious, like, how, from your perspective, do people become beyond just excellent? How do they become an elite athlete? Like, what is it that is what's behind that from your perspective? And if you have a story or an anecdote, or an intervention, obviously you can keep it, confidential. I'd just be very curious.
I know from my perspective, I can easily say they're cut a little different. They're cut from a different cloth, maybe a little compulsive, maybe a little crazy.
So in the nature nurture, like there is something, when I think
there's
about cloth,
traits.
like there's something about.
Yeah, there's traits, and they're individual. Like you can say gifted, more resilient from an injury perspective, willing to really commit themselves to living a monk life if needed, right? Strip down the distractions, etc. But truly, over my experience working one-on-one with athletes at a high level, I think the one thing that differentiates a great high performer is because they love it. They love it so much. They can't think about anything else except going to bed so they can get up in the morning and do that thing that they love. And I think that's the one aspect that maybe doesn't get talked enough about. It's not, and that's not to say that discipline isn't required. and that motivation isn't required, that there's going to be hard days when you wake up and you'd rather stay in bed. But more often than not, I think the best high performers are truly those athletes that love what they're doing. They wouldn't want to do anything else.
It's like this intense fervor.
Yes.
Interesting.
And I don't know what, my colleagues here would have to say, but in my experience, and I'm assuming that cuts across different sport types, but if you really don't love it, some people could boil it down to the why. What's your why? You have to have a compelling reason to keep engaging. And frankly, at least in endurance and ultra endurance sports, something that hurts for a long time, you have to have a really strong reason. And I believe that the strongest reason is love.
It's amazing. I love that. Questions in my mind, like, can you over index on that? Like, what happens if you love it too much? Like, is there any,
that's compulsion.
Risk there?
Yes.
Compulsion.
Compulsiveness. And yes, you can do things compulsively, and that's not healthy. And I would actually say that's not love, because you're loving the behavior more than yourself. Oh. And truly, that's why I named my company. One of the reasons I named my company Metta, METTA, which is Buddhist for loving kindness, because I believe truly that the route to performance is from loving it and loving yourself, not go hard or go home. It's cultivating a sense of loving kindness for yourself.
That's beautiful. I love that. Awesome. Simon, Lindsay, what from your perspective, what goes into, like, beyond the sets and reps and the focus on technique, what is behind, high performance?
I think I'm going to say something really obvious, but it's worth mentioning. It is really, really hard to win things. And it's really, really hard to be the top at anything. Right. And I think we sometimes forget, in my world at the moment, I work with a professional basketball team. We really want to win games of basketball, but so does the other team. They really want to win as well. And it's difficult to do that. And it's difficult to do that when things are easy. And by easy, I mean one game a week, and then you have a day off, and then we get time to practice. Mm-hmm. It's even harder when you're doing that. You're flying to a different city, you're getting in at 3 a.m., you then need to get up in a hotel room. You need to go and get some shots up. You need to practice. Then you need to play again that night. So I would start by saying it's very, very hard. And that means, I agree, there has to be some passion. There has to be some enjoyment. There has to be some love. And there needs to be a lot of resilience. And again, I think that sounds obvious, but it's all of that multiplied by a long period of time. And for me, that's one of the differences. A lot of people can do hard things for a short period of time, and a lot of people can do hard things when things are going well. It's very, very difficult to do hard things very consistently for a long period of time. And I do think that's one of the biggest differentiators. Now, I would caveat that by there is a subgroup of people in every profession, and sport is one of them, that will succeed at the highest level in spite of everything else. They are so naturally gifted, in spite of the program, in spite of what they're doing, they will be at the top. But that's, I'll probably get these statistics wrong, but it's going to be in the right ballpark. In basketball, percentage of players that play at high school that make it to college is, a low percent. The percentage of college basketball players that make it to a professional level is 1% roughly. And then the percentage of those people that have any length of career is obviously below 1%. So we're talking about the 1% of the 1% in this area. Now, there is a group of people that will, no matter what they do, succeed. But the vast, vast majority, in my opinion, it is a lot of work over a long period of time where it is very difficult to have a chance to succeed.
Wow. Okay. So resilience. Lindsay.
No, I'm just going to say, I wish I reviewed these statistics for my spring training talk. I think it was in 2024 where I went, there's published data. It's like, I don't know, Sam, it's like in the US, at least like 4% of high school players go on to play college, and then 1% of D1 players go on to pro. And then this, and it's like, just like this smaller and smaller. So it's just insanely hard. Jonathan, I cut you off.
It's no, it's incredible, and I think about, you can love it, and have this incredible passion. You can be incredibly resilient, but then like when all the force is like against you, when you're losing, and then you're losing, and you're trying your hardest, but then you lose, and then there's like a little bit of toxicity maybe in the locker room or in the team, and all of a sudden, like that passion, that unbridled passion that brought you into the sport, you're midway into your career and you're just not feeling it anymore. What do we do there? Like, do we see that? And how do you turn that around at the individual level? I'm curious also at the team level, but like at the individual level, like how do you get through a rut?
I mean, we see this in business, right? I almost want to throw the question back at you. When you see a career plateau or burnout at work, what's the solution?
Yeah, I mean, when times are great, it's performance is much easier because you have all this tailwind behind your back, right? And you're operating your best. And when you're under these heightened levels of stress and pressure, for a protracted period of time, then we're more vulnerable to derailment, to depression, to different forms of anxiety. And it's really tough. So from my perspective in the work that I do as an executive coach and as a CEO exposed to these pressures on a hourly basis, it's I'll tell you, I mean, I would concur that with the importance of staying grounded in resilience, resilient and engaging in these self-care practices that help you get through the bumps and the tough times, and always grounding yourself in the North Star purpose of what we're doing. But it's also really, really valuable to have sort of some trusted advisors around you, people who can provide both support, because you just can't do it alone. You just can't, right? And feedback, like, dude, are you okay? You seem a little anxious, or you've been talking really fast, or not everything made 100% sense. Is everything all right? To be able to get that candid feedback that's not judgmental, that's constructive, and the support that is really, really valuable alongside the I can call it emotional fortitude, which is this combination of being centered and always focused on North Star. There's also a piece to this, by the way, which is just around believing in hope and having conviction that we're going to get there. And I think when I look at leaders that are really, really successful CEOs, they've all gone through bad years and great years, and hopefully more great years than bad years. But what makes them stand out is they have a belief, and they believe so strongly that it's almost like they will it into existence, which is very cool. So that's a little bit from what I see in my world.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I don't have a trainer, chef, psychologist, performance psychologist, and the team of 6 to 8 that Simon manages on a daily basis.
That's not always helpful, right? Like, I think
okay.
Yeah, that's not always helpful. If you have,
I have that on my bucket list. You're saying
that's that now. It more often is, obviously. If you have a series of experts in their domain trying to help you figure something out, that that you assume that's very beneficial, and on the whole, it absolutely is. But in that scenario where something is not going as well as we would like that, whether that is performance based, whether that is an injury that's taking longer than we expected, whether that's coming back and having a second injury or a setback or something like that, the tendency is from a very positive place, every person involved in that person's care to dive in to try and help fix it, right? From a very, very good place. Sometimes what that can cause very easily is a lot of different messages, a lot of different solutions, a lot of crossover in methodology or planning, and a lot of confusion. So it's not uncommon for that problem to be expanded from a lot of people diving in to try and do the right thing. And that's a challenge on its own because a lot, and we've spoken about this before, one of the things I certainly have found in my role here is we very rarely miss things. We do, but it's not common. We very rarely miss things. Where we do tend to have more issues is we do things 2 or 3 or 4 times. And that's because everyone is trying to help. And that causes a different set of challenges.
So it comes from this really great place, but it can, I mean, if left unwatched or managed, I mean, it would just create chaos, I imagine. I mean, a lot of redundancy at minimum.
At best, redundancy. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting.
I think in baseball, we have the luxury of a lot of data. And to Simon's point, it needs to be titrated. I mean, so the player doesn't receive every single thing that all of the analysts produce, or that all of the sports science and sport performance teams, sports med, contribute together to like our conceptualization of what might be going on. Something that's really important in sport, in other performance domains, is getting the performer's perspective, right? So in this scenario that you're describing, it's kind of like, I don't know, I've lost my love for the game, but I live in the business world, so really understanding like, well, what's going on? What else is going on? How long has this been going on? So like having the conversation, thinking, did you recently welcome a child and you're really under recovered and you have more prominent negative mood states and everything is just kind of crummy right now? Like, is that what's going on? Is there some sort of unexamined existential crisis that's brewing and you're trying to, I mean, it could be a lot of different things, but you need to have the person's voice, the performer's voice. And then to the extent that you have access to these others, like you said, soliciting feedback from people who are in your work world, in your other support world, if you have access to data, I mean, even if it's something as simple, like you gave a presentation, you're feeling kind of crummy about it. Well, why are you feeling crummy about it? Well, I don't know. Let's go look at the presentation. Or would you rather avoid it? I mean, like in sport, there's a whole lot of like confronting. You did that. 40,000 people were watching you live. However many other people were watching you, and everyone saw it. Like, so there's a whole lot of like, it's harder to avoid sometimes in the world of sport.
That gives me the chills just thinking about the stakes of that. But I mean, how often when you see somebody like not living up to what many believe is their potential, how often is that a function of, something brewing under the hood? And when, in those instances, like, how are you intervening? Like, how does that practically like get metabolized and the individual get to the other side of that?
It's a hard question because everybody's a little bit different. I focus a lot with the internal dialogue and how an athlete talks to themselves because words are so important. And Jonathan, you mentioned earlier talking about, a business professional that is optimistic and says, we will get there. That is fundamentally different than we have to get there. It's very different energy.
We will get there. Okay, so let's unpack that. We will get there versus we have to get there.
Yes. One's compulsive, one's optimistic.
Oh, and that's so subtle, but I'm seeing it. Yeah.
But words are very powerful. So typically I work individually, not with teams. So that's a differentiator here. But truly, I am interested, and this is where the skill of coaching is so powerful, regardless if we're working with an executive or an athlete. We need to ask the right questions so that we can get insight. How are they talking to themselves? What are the stakes? what matters? What do they want?
So how are they leading themselves? Are they pushing, towards something in an almost like unsustainable, unrealistic way? Like we have to get there, and it's almost like punishing, or are we being inspiring and leading with meta, with love of myself? Like we will get there. Like it may not be a straight line, but we're gonna get there.
Yes, and we know that a mindset is a skill. You can train mindfulness and awareness.
Yeah.
Just like you can train coaching skills.
On the note of coaching, I want to pivot just for a moment to like, okay, so you all had coaches, work for coaches, are coaches in some instances, right? Like, have you seen coaches use the we will get there versus we have to get there? And is there a pattern of like one works better than the other? Like, I'm just curious because I've seen, in hockey, I've seen like really like, hard ass coaches, like, I'm not going to say names. And in one year, the team won the Stanley Cup. And in the last 4 years, his team he left that team, went to a different team, and they're just completely all-star team, very unsuccessful team. And then you have the inspirational coach who, wins the Stanley Cup, but then also like, may not deliver in subsequent years. So I'm just curious if there's any like how we're thinking about this from a coaching and even like, let's say, leadership standpoint.
I think the answer is it's really complicated, right? Because for a coach, you're inheriting players and staff, and there's can be ownership. There can be lots of complicated.
The context, it can be extremely complex.
But to Holly's point, so this have to or will have to get to, right? What underneath that, it's approach versus avoidance, right? So when there's a challenge, you can view it as like, this is a challenge, this is an opportunity, or this is a threat, right? So like when there's a challenge or an opportunity, woohoo, like I can approach it. When it's presented as a threat, like you might want to avoid, you might want to run away. I used to work with wrestling, and I would make this really bad joke to wrestlers, like, you can't you can't hop off the mat. Like you're there and you're doing it. There's no backing away, no matter how. Yes, okay, maybe you don't persist, and then the match is over.
You could tap out.
Yeah, but like you're there. It's happening, right? So whereas other athletes, they'll kind of like pull themselves away, like in subtle ways. They can forego the opportunity to perform, and fundamentally, it's maybe they're injured, maybe there's something else going on. They have conceptualized the challenge as a threat as opposed to an opportunity. So, coaches, you can be a challenging coach backed up by a lot of like love and care and support. You can be perceived as like demanding and really supportive. And that can cause athletes, like their nervous systems to, approach like, here I go. I can do this, as opposed to like, I'm going to go away from this. So I think there is what Holly's raising. There is this undertone to the way we work with ourselves, the way we work, when we're coaching another person, a team of people. But there's data like down to the cellular level. We know this like from exposure therapy. Let's say someone's afraid of something, if you can get them to willingly say, I hate this, I'm afraid of it, and I'm going to approach it anyways, they have a different kind of a stress response, as opposed to like me trying to force, like, you ever try to force your kid to get a vaccine? It doesn't work out. Whereas if you can like say to your kid, okay, I know you don't want to do it, and we're going to do it, and here's all the things, different things are activated in the nervous system.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, because I came at this with more of a binary, like you're either like hardcore push or you're very supportive and pull, but there is this sort of like, more nuanced approach where you're using both strategies of push and pull, and maybe adapting it. I wonder if like the best coaches are sort of adapting it to what they think the player needs. Like maybe somebody needs a real kick in the ass, but this one really needs to be nurtured and coddled. And
yeah, you can't just be a dictator or a cheerleader. You have to be able to
you got to,
yeah.
I guess it's situational leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Simon, any thoughts on this one? I mean, you've been around, you've seen a lot of coaches.
I have, and I've seen a huge range of everything that everyone's talking about. I would say my initial reaction is that, this idea that methods there are many and concepts there are few, like these concepts of belief, conviction you mentioned, but a plan, and the plan can change. Adaptability is really important. But overarching, I've seen coaches approach that in so many different ways. I've worked with authoritarian coaches. I've worked with micromanaging coaches. I've worked with really, really successful coaches of all types. And the things my first thought when you mentioned that, where I've seen many ways be successful. Now that's different coaches. It's also different athletes. There's different players. There's different backgrounds. There's different ages. It's all sorts of those things. But the themes that jump to mind for me are they have some sort of plan. They're adaptable, and they have this almost unwavering conviction or belief that we can figure this out together. That together might be the team. It might be the coach and the player. It might be the entire group. It might be the organization. But we can figure anything out, and we're committed to doing that.
Yeah, I think when I think about it, so it's fascinating, and what I'm hearing as a common theme is that like that situational. It's less about the style and more about the adaptability in the moment to what the team and what the players need. But the point around like having that like ultra conviction, even when things are like, we're losing, we've lost 5 games straight, but you still believe. I imagine a real turning point for a coach is like when that belief, less even about the style and their approach, but if that conviction like crosses below a certain point, it's like the beginning of the end, no? Because the team is just riding so much on that, like they need their leader to have that hope and conviction that we can do it. Can we talk for a second about turnarounds and like the phenomena of a turnaround? I've kind of gone through it myself as a hockey player. Like, again, I mentioned 4 bad years of losing, and then 1 year where we just like came out of nowhere and won the cup. I actually, brought my hat. I'm going to put it right here so everybody knows that we won the championship. Unfortunately, we can't find the cup. It's being passed around and we can't find it. So once I locate that, we'll have that on the podcast. Probably somebody's drinking beer. Somebody's dog's drinking beer out of it right now. But yeah, the player composition on my team didn't change, but we changed and we won. I have some theories about it, but you all are the experts here. So curious about turnarounds and how we get at the team level out of a rut and into a winning dynamic.
Well, I think back in those 4 years where you were not getting W's, how certain were you? Like, we get really granular in sport. Like, these processes work, right? This bat speed, this bat path, this launch angle, this, we have some level of certainty around what increases our chances of success. And I mean, at the, the sports psychology level, it's like, I know I need to have like kind of my nervous system kind of like this, or I need to be reminding myself of these cues. Maybe I need to be in the cages, like for hitters, or if some pitchers coming in from the bullpen, like I need to do this kind of warm up to prepare my body into my mind, my mind to, increase my chances of performing well. So how certain were you of your processes when you were losing?
Highly uncertain.
Okay.
But I honestly, I think, so parallels like corporate and sports. On the corporate side, our research on team effectiveness would indicate that the two primary ingredients for success is team productivity, right? So how effectively and efficiently we get things done, how coordinated we are. So that's kind of like the domain or ballpark that you're talking about. Like, how clear are we about the technical side of what we're doing and how we're communicating and coordinating? And then there's team culture, which is sort of like how it feels to be on this team, the emotional, social intelligence. Does it feel safe? Are we taking pride? And if I'm to be honest, while in the model, in our research, they're almost like equal weighted, I actually think when I look back at my team, part of the reason why we were unsuccessful was because we had deficient team culture. And so in some ways, it doesn't even matter if we were good or not good from a technical performance standpoint, because nobody really was like happy per se. Nobody felt gelled. People weren't jazzed like to be doing this together.
And you're playing ice hockey, right? You're not aggregating scores as gymnasts competing separately, and you're not doing a relay where I could do my best performance and then I don't have to really like you, but I can pass you the baton. Like there's different levels of like interdependency, like how much do you actually need to be coordinating with your teammates, and ice hockey is really fast, and you really have to be operating from this sort of shared mind so that you know where you are, you're going to pass the puck and to where he's not, but where he will be. So yeah, if you do not have that groupiness with your teammates, that will be like an emergent negative dynamic, and take, no matter how skillful you are, if you're not together enough to work from the same sort of mental model of what's going to happen. So yeah, correcting that probably unleashed this latent skill that wasn't showing up on the ice. I think it really depends on how interdependent.
100%. And to spoiler alert, what happened was one of the players, and he was the only new player to the team. He actually was a coach. He coached college hockey, and he volunteered to be player coach. So he was actually coaching us, and part of his coaching was technical, but a lot of it was just like, hey, like that goal went in, like let's give the goalie some support. Let's show him some love. And our default would be like, man, you let that goal in, like, or just not saying anything because that would be more, appropriate. But it was that the difference really was leadership and that coaching that made the difference for us. I know we're getting a little close to time, and I want to be respectful of that. But Simon, anything on your side, just because you're in it, man. You're like in a turnaround. It's awesome. I know it's early. I don't want to jinx anything, but it's awesome watching the 76ers right now. Like, what do you attribute it to?
So it's early. First of all, I would say I've been part of overperforming teams. I've been part of underperforming teams. I've been the change in one year when there's not been much change. I've been the constant in other years. I've been in a few different environments. One thing I would say at the start is every year is different. As much as we like to think they're the same and they're connected, and there is some consistency. Every year is different, whether it's different players, different staff, different culture, different philosophy. Every year is different. They are connected, but they are different. I think one of the things that we're talking about that's a constant theme in everything we've been discussing so far is decision making. And at the end of all of this, leaders are making a series of decisions almost constantly, right? Whether that's game plan for tonight, race strategy for the 100-mile race, the batting lineup, the deal that we're going to do to try and buy this business, the next employee we're going to employ, all that sort of stuff. It's a series of decisions, and we're constantly making those with the best available information. So in my world, that is a combination of objective findings. It's a combination of hopefully some emotional intelligence. It's a combination of talking to human beings, and we're trying to weight all of that appropriately, and we're trying to make the best decision. Now, I also think we need to remember that they are never, or very, very rarely, 100% decisions. We have a level of confidence in every decision we make, and we want to get it as good as possible. and we're not going to get everyone right, and we like to think that we would. But if we're making, an example with baseball, if you're hitting 300, 3 out of every 10 pitches, you're a Hall of Fame baseball player. You're missing 7 of them, right? And we have this idea that we're making these decisions. We can make the right decision and not get the outcome we want, as in we might not win the game, right? And so there's a lot of things that change, and I know that you cannot separate that in the sports world from winning or losing, but the point that sticks out to me with anything is we can consistently try and make the best decisions based on the information, but they're not always going to turn out how we hope that they will. And that sometimes can be the difference. We can make really, really good decisions, and we can be 80% confident, and the 20% happens, and that might happen 10 times in a row. That doesn't mean those decisions were wrong, and they shouldn't impact how we make them in the future. But that can make a difference. And then we can go on a streak when we're making decisions that we're not very confident in, they pay off for us. And sometimes that's the difference. So I think for me, it's decision making, and it's context, and it's the threshold of where we're prepared to make those decisions and see how they play out.
I absolutely love that. I love that you're bringing decision making, and I love that metaphor. I mean, it's a reality for many. That you could be a Hall of Famer and miss 7 out of 10. Which is just, it's an incredible statistic. I mean, usually you think of batting average, you don't really necessarily think about that this person actually missed more, a lot of failure. And to the point Holly was making earlier about, what distinguishes like excellent from elite, this notion of like passion, but not just passion for winning. It ultimately, what's even more important is like love of one's self, presumably. Like, I don't know, am I botching that, Holly? Is that?
No, that's right. It's love for yourself, that confidence, truly, which is, I think, a performance enhancer, not arrogance, but confidence. And then, then a love for how you're spending your time, your effort, your energy, your teammates.
And I'm sure that helps. Like if you fail, like you're willing to like, absorb that, learn from that, forgive yourself.
Right. The outcome might not happen, but if you're doing everything right, like what Simon was saying, then you can enjoy the experience. And the experience, we can control much more than the outcome.
But if I'm in the have to win mindset, right, then I'm on a crash course.
Mm-hmm. It's risky.
But if I'm in a we will win, it's going to be, a nonlinear journey with some bumps, and we're not going to win every game. We're not going to hit every pitch. Then enjoy the ride, right?
Yeah, and you can develop a matrix of self-assessment, or like we define like what is a good at bat, or what is a productive at bat. It's not necessarily something that's helping your batting average. It's identifying the right pitches, hitting in accordance with your strengths, waiting for the pitcher to give you, like there's various subcomponents. So yeah, assessing yourself. If you're assessing yourself only with the outcome in mind, like only if you win, then you're vulnerable to assessing yourself with your losses too, right? And then your identity is like doing this roller coaster in accordance with your performance. Now, obviously the outcome matters, because like in my industry, if you're a really good hitter, a really good pitcher, you're gonna get, you're gonna have more career longevity, you're gonna make more money. There's real tangible gains to outcomes, but there has to be this mediating factor of like, what is the process through which you will, increase the chances of obtaining those outcomes. And then it gives you this healthy distance to keeping your identity separate from the outcomes. And then, like to Holly's point, loving yourself, or, preserving your love for the game. I mean, I know some athletes who are really best in the world at what they do, and they don't happen to care for their sport that much. Maybe it's like, it's a curse a little bit, but that's okay. Because you can have there's people in the business world who are leading things, or, very successful, and maybe that's not really their passion. Perhaps they're just very good at that thing, but can you have a professionalized relationship with your career, and you very much can. And then you have space to magnify the things in your life that you really do love.
Wow. This is way more complicated than sets and reps. It's amazing. All right. I know we're at time. If we can, would love to just do bonus lightning round, either a piece of advice that you would impart for leaders right now in, we're Q4 2025, with so all that context, or a key learn from this year. So you get to choose either a key learn that you picked up and that's guiding you and inspiring you this year, or a piece of advice. What would it be? I can start us off. Key learn for me is, there's so many things that we think can't change, and we build these like sort of brittle constructs in our mind of like what needs to be in order for in order for us to survive or even thrive, and to take that next level of pressure testing the paradigm and to pushing ourselves, and thinking outside of the box and being bold. That's been my mission this year, being bold. And the world is very dynamic, and there's a lot of continuous change, and we need to meet that context as leaders, and accordingly. So that's my big learn from this year. Who's next?
So,
under 1 minute.
All right, I'll give you one under 1 minute, which I'm fairly passionate about. This idea of recovery. We're very focused on recovery, right? And I think sometimes we think that is just for the elite athletes, and it's not, and it's not complicated. And I think it helps you make better decisions. I think it helps your quality of life. And I think it's really important for everybody, no matter what you do. And the only other thing I would say is there's this big focus because of social media and Apple Watches and all the technology that we have to focus on these 1 or 2 little percent gains. Focusing on the 85%, which is going to be getting appropriate sleep, eating reasonably well, exercising, hydrating, the difference that makes is enormous. And I think it's really important for everybody, not just people that are trying to perform physically, but people that have to make important decisions. And there's a lot of science that impacts it, and I think it's a really, really important thing.
Love it, Simon. Love it. Thank you, Holly.
Get coached. If you're looking to
get coached,
your performance edge in whatever domain that may be, get a coach. And if your coach doesn't have a coach, get another coach.
Love it. Simple, great advice. Lindsay.
So something I've been playing around with quite a bit in my mind is how to use like altered states to access your next level of performance. Like, I mean, they're called altered states because they're not like the usual states. So 99% of your time is spent in like, normal consciousness or sleep. But of creating a practice or cultivating something about altered states, if you're doing something that, you want to take it to the next level. So that could be something like mindfulness and meditation. We know that it kind of like scrambles the default mode network in the brain, like just kind of like the usual way of functioning. Dreaming is an altered state of consciousness. So like kind of planting the seed within yourself that if there's do I have like a problem or a challenge or an opportunity that requires something more than what I'm currently like generating right now, deliberately create a space where you can try to use an altered state.
Wow. I love that. I mean, this podcast is putting me into an altered state. I'm feeling like so jazzed, and I'm moderating this, contributing to it, but also like simultaneously turning myself into a sponge in my all-star jersey from 25 years ago, my moment of glory, hour and 20 minutes back in St. Louis in high school. You guys, thank you so much. This has been enlightening and also extremely practical. Some incredibly practical, applied nuggets of wisdom. And I'm excited for all the leaders watching to try out some of these techniques and to experiment with some of the mindsets and skills that we've talked about. So thank you so much. And that's a wrap.